Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. We are from the Office of Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chains, and this will be a webinar focusing on the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, Battery Materials Processing and Battery Manufacturing Grants, or the BIL 40207 BNC program, specifically for Funding Opportunity Announcement 3099. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted at a later date. The chat function has been disabled, and we ask that you remain muted for the duration of the webinar. Should you have any questions on this webinar or on the FOA in general, we will, at the end of this, steer you towards our frequently asked questions email. And we're asking that you submit your questions to that so that they can be answered through the frequently asked questions link. And with that, we can go to the next slide. The agenda for today's presentation will first focus on the funding opportunity background and overview. We'll discuss the milestones for this funding opportunity and timeline, as well as a full application overview discussing both the full application process and contents that should be in all full applications submitted to the FOA. Next, we'll go into the review information for full application phase, discussing both the technical review criteria, standards for application and evaluation, and what it means to be non-responsive application. My part will end on the frequently asked questions, and then we will turn it over to our environmental justice and equity team to discuss the community benefits plans that are specifically asked as part of this funding opportunity full application. And we'll do a deep dive on what it means to have a good community benefits plan with that team. And so with that, we can go to the next slide. My name is Mallory Kleitz. I'm a technology manager within the Battery and Critical Materials Office within the Office of Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chains, and I will be your presenter for the first part of this webinar, focusing on the full application phase of this funding opportunity. So a little background on this funding opportunity. The activities found within this FOA support the Bipartisan Infrastructure Section 40207 BNC program, as well as the broader government-wide approach to upgrading and modernizing infrastructure, including strengthening critical domestic manufacturing and supply chains to maximize the benefits of our clean energy transition as we try to curb the climate crisis and advance environmental justice. The funding overall for this FOA opportunity is $3.5 billion in competitive grant funding. This FOA is focused on intended recipients for it being the battery manufacturers and those involved in the battery supply chain. There is a 50% cost share minimum for this funding opportunity from industry, and there are also minimums for our federal share of $50 million in order to retool, retrofit, or expand existing facilities, and or $100 million federal share for new facilities, as well as $50 million minimum for demonstration scale. And with that, we can go to the next slide. So the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, Battery Materials Processing and Battery Manufacturing funding opportunity will invest in projects that strengthen critical domestic manufacturing and supply chains. This FOA aims to reach across upstream, midstream, and downstream segments of the battery supply chain, supporting critical mineral refining, midstream battery materials and components manufacturing, as well as subsequent cell manufacturing and end-of-life recycling. The concept paper deadline for this funding opportunity has passed as of January 9th, and only applicants who have submitted an eligible concept paper, whether that be encouraged or discouraged, will be eligible to submit a full application. And please note as a reminder here that a discouraged notification for a concept paper does not prohibit an organization from submitting a full application. We can go to the next slide. The funding opportunity milestones for this funding opportunity have been laid out here on the slide. We released a notice of intent in August of 2023 with the full FOA document released in November 15th of 2023. Concept papers were due, as I said, January 9th, 2024, and the FOA webinar is being done on January 24th. Our FOA applications will close March 19th. Between now and the FOA application close date, you will receive an encouragement or discouragement notification for your concept papers that is expected in February of 2024. And as I said, a discouragement for a concept paper does not prohibit you from submitting a full application. The submission deadline for full applications is March 19th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Expected selection announcements are to occur in August of 2024, and award finalization after negotiations are anticipated to occur between August 2024 and January of 2025 for this funding opportunity. Okay, great. This is an overview of all of the different areas of interest within this funding opportunity. The first three are focused within the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, Section 40207B, towards battery materials processing. Area of interest 1 is focused on commercial scale lithium separation from domestic sources. Area of interest 2 is focused on commercial scale domestic recovery of non-lithium battery critical minerals. And area of interest 3 is focused on commercial scale domestic processing of battery materials precursors. The anticipated award size and number of awards are given for each of the areas of interest. The next 5 areas of interest are focused on the battery manufacturing grants, or 40207C, with area of interest 4 focused on domestic manufacturing of cathodes and anodes. Area of interest 5 focused on electrolyte salts, solvents, and mixes. Area of interest 6 focused on cell manufacturing for both small and specialized markets. And again, the award size and anticipated number of awards for each area of interest are given below. I'm going to let this sit for a minute so everyone can digest before we move on to the final 2 areas of interest within this funding opportunity. Okay, great. We can move to the next slide now. Okay, the last 2 areas of interest, area of interest 7 and 8, are again focused in the battery manufacturing grants program and are focused on commercial scale domestic production of non-lithium based battery cells and systems. And the last one focused on domestic manufacturing of other battery cell and system components. And this is the open topic within this funding opportunity. The funding opportunity in full is available on the Infrastructure Exchange website, and full applications again are due March 19th, 2024 at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. This program in general is focused to expand capabilities of the United States in advanced battery manufacturing, enhance national security by reducing reliance of the U.S. on foreign competitors for critical minerals, materials, and technologies, ensure that the U.S. has a viable battery materials processing industry with sufficient capacity to supply the North American battery needs, ensure investment in high-quality jobs to support America's competitive advantage, and provide good quality jobs for people in low or moderate income communities, rural communities, and/or communities for workers that have lost or at risk of job loss due to the displacement of the fossil fuels industry, including automotive workers and communities. Okay, and great. With that, we can go into the next slide, which focuses on the full application process for this funding opportunity. This in full can be found within the funding opportunity announcement under Section 4A. I'm not going to read everything here, but I will let it sit on the screen to digest. The application process includes multiple submission phases, the concept paper phase, which we have already stated has passed, and a full application phase. Only applicants who submitted an eligible concept paper will be eligible to submit a full application, and all submissions for full applications must conform to the form and contents described below and included in the funding opportunity announcement, including maximum page lengths. So again, I'll give everyone a minute to kind of digest the full list that's on the screen, but we ask that you please refer to the funding opportunity announcement in full for further information and a repeat of this information. Okay, great. We can go to the next slide where we continue the additional information for the full application process. Okay. Again, you can find this in FOA section 4AI. The S3 exchange is designed to enforce the deadlines specified for this FOA, and the apply and submit buttons will be automatically disabled at the defined submission deadline of 5 p.m. Eastern Time for March 19th. Applicants who experience technical difficulties with submission prior to the FOA deadline should contact the S3 Exchange help desk for assistance, and that can be found at Infrastructure Exchange support at hq.doe.gov. The Exchange Help Desk and/or Exchange System administrators will assist applicants in resolving such issues. Under normal conditions, i.e. at least 48 hours before a submission deadline, applicants should allow at least 1 hour prior to complete the infrastructure exchange submission process for a full application. And applicants who successfully submitted a concept paper can do the following to initiate a full application phase process by logging into your S3 Exchange, opening the My Submissions page, locate your concept paper record, and click Start Full Application. There are manuals as well for applicants for further instructions. Okay, can we go to the next slide? Okay, great. Application forms. This information can be found in the funding opportunities section 4B. To access your application forms and instructions available on S3 Exchange, please go to infrastructure-exchange.energy.gov and select the appropriate funding opportunity number. The maximum file size that can be uploaded in the S3 Exchange is 50 megabytes, and so files larger than that cannot be uploaded. If a file is larger but still within the maximum page limit, it must be broken into 2 parts and denoted as follows. DOE will not accept late submissions that result from technical difficulties due to uploading files that exceed 50 megabytes. Okay, and with that, we can go to the next slide, which is focused on the full application content requirements. Each application must be limited to a single concept and be unique. Full applications must conform to the following requirements and must not exceed stated page limits. All of this information can be found in the funding opportunity announcement section 4D1. Again, I will let this sit on the screen to digest. We'll go into a deeper dive of what the technical volume piece means as well, but each of the following components and their page limits have been described and the anticipated file name for each one of those that should be submitted with a full application. Okay, we can move to the next slide, which continues the full list of content requirements. As highlighted, we will also discuss letters of support from labor unions in more specifics further in this webinar. Okay, and we can go to the next slide, which again is focused on the technical volume piece of this content. So the technical volume is the key technical component of your full application. This information can be found in the funding opportunities section 4D2. The content of the technical volume should not exceed a total of 30 pages and should include a cover page, a project overview worth approximately 10% of the technical volume, a technical description of the innovation and impact, and this should be approximately 25% of the volume, a business development, market viability, management and financial plan, a work plan, and lastly, a technical qualifications and resources. And again, this should not exceed 30 pages, and these approximate percentages of the volume are just suggestions. Okay, can we move to the next slide? Okay. Letters of support from labor unions. Information for this section can be found in the funding opportunity announcement section 4D19. If applicable, the letters must state that a labor union is committed to specific terms that support the hiring and/or retention of workers in the motor vehicle or parts manufacturing industries, support workforce continuity, and reduce workforce risks. The following information for each third party contributing a letter should be identified. the name of the organization, the understanding and relationship between the applicant and the labor union, and each letter must not exceed 1 page. Again, more information on this can be found in the full funding opportunity announcement. Okay, and with that, we can move on to transparency of foreign connections. This can be found in funding opportunity section 4D24. Note the information does not need to be submitted with the full application for transparency of foreign connections. This information will be required of applicants selected for pre-selection interviews for this funding opportunity or upon request by Department of Energy. Also note that this information is in addition to and separate from the requirement that applicants whose supply chains contain foreign entities of concern will not be prioritized. And more information on foreign entities of concern can be found on Department of Energy's websites by searching for foreign entities of concern. Let's leave this on the screen for a moment for everyone to read this. Applicants must provide the following in relation to the proposed recipient and each subrecipient. Okay, great. And we can move on to the next slide, which continues the list of pieces that will be asked for transparency of foreign connections. And as a reminder, DOE reserves the right to request additional or clarifying information based on the information submitted in the above categories. And as a reminder, this all information can be found in the funding opportunity announcement, section 4D26. Okay, and with that, we will move on to the next section, which is the full application technical review criteria. Okay, this information can be found in funding opportunities section 5A2. There are different criterions for which each full application will be reviewed and scored. The first criterion focuses on the technology merit, innovation, and supply chain impact, and is worth a cumulative 30% of the overall score for each full application. There are several different pieces of this criterion considered, including the following factors: supply chain security, supply chain strength, supply chain coverage and analysis, feasibility of the project, technical innovation and impact, the end product, recycling approach if applicable, environmental impacts, workforce and operational impacts. And applicants will be reviewed considering factors that minimize risk to project success, including implementing effective strategies to avoid labor strife and otherwise ensure adequate labor supply. We encourage you to read the full list and detail of all of these factors in the funding opportunity announcement. And with that, we can go to the next criterion. Criterion 2 is focused on cost share, financial resources, and commercial viability. This is worth a cumulative 30% and includes factors such as cost share strength, financial availability, business viability, market viability, budget reasonableness, intellectual property, and regional impacts. Again, we encourage you to read this in detail in the full FOA within section 5A2. Okay, and with that, we can go to criterion 3. Criterion 3 is focused on project work plan, the management team, and partners for your proposed project, and is worth a cumulative 20% of the overall technical review criteria. Okay, moving on to criterion 4. This is the community benefits plan and is worth a cumulative 20% of the overall technical review criteria and is the focus of the deep dive within this webinar after my piece on the full applications phase. This criterion involves consideration of the following factors: community and labor engagement, quality jobs to attract and retain skilled workers, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and Justice 40 initiatives. And my colleague Colleen will go into a deep dive in this momentarily. Great, and with that, we can move to the next slide. Great. The standards for the application evaluation for this funding opportunity are outlined in section 5B. This funding opportunity has a concept papers phase, a full applications phase, a federal consensus board, and final selections phase. Applicants that are determined to be eligible will be evaluated in accordance with this FOA by the standards set forth in the Notice of Objective Merit Review Procedure and guidance provided within the DOE Merit Review Guide for Financial Assistance, effective September 2020. And that can be found in the hyperlink given. Please see the FOA document, section 5C for other selection factors, and section 5D for evaluation and selection process. Okay, and with that, we can go to the next slide. Okay. Information on non-responsive applications can be found in FOA section 1C. The following types of applications will be deemed non-responsive and will not be reviewed or considered for an award. And I am going to read these in full for understanding. Applications that fall outside of technical parameters specified in sections 1A and 1B of the FOA. Applications for proposed technologies that are not based on sound scientific principles. Applications that are based on research, development, or pilot scale alone activities, which are out of scope of this funding opportunity focused on deployment. Applications for demonstration projects that have less than a $50 million minimum federal share. Applications for new commercial scale projects that have less than a $100 minimum for federal share. Applications for retooling, retrofitting, or expanding commercial scale projects that have less than $50 million federal share. Applications that include mining operations, i.e. mining and extraction, or mining equipment, excavation, labor, siting, etc., that is within the project scope. Applications that propose cost share contributions in the form of donation of land, existing buildings, or existing equipment. Applications that propose the purchase of land in scope of the award as part of the budget. Applications that propose to subordinate the federal government interest in property or equipment to obtain project financing. And lastly, applications that propose the use of federal financing, such as DOE loans or loan guarantees, to provide the required cost share or other support, the same scope that is proposed in the response to this FOA. Again, all of this information can be found in FOA section 1C, and we encourage you to review this in full. Great, and with that, we can go to the next slide. We ask that everyone continue to submit FOA questions to our funding opportunity announcement inbox at DE-FOA-003099 at netl.doe.gov. A full list of frequently asked questions can be found at infrastructureexchange.energy.gov under this FOA opportunity announcement. We ask that any questions in relation to this webinar also be focused to that FOA inbox, and we will respond within the frequently asked questions document. And with that, I want to thank everyone. I appreciate your time, and we will turn it over to our Energy, Justice, and Equities Office to discuss in detail the community benefits plans that are associated with this full application process.
Hi all, I'm wondering if you are able to see my presentation at all?
It does show you as the presenter, Kate, but we don't see a slide right now.
All right, sorry about that, folks. Just bear with us here. If that helps. Did that work?
Yes.
Great. Let's
And I
see.
apologize. I announced Colleen as the presenter, but Kate will be our presenter from the
We're
EGD.
actually, sorry, we are both going to be presenting.
Wonderful.
So yeah, just wanted to let you guys know that. Okay, and are you seeing presenter view? This
Yes.
is my first time with a WebEx, so just wanted to make sure. Great.
I think you're good.
Awesome. So moving right along into our presentation, my name is Kate Ringness. I am Chief Strategist in the Office of Energy Jobs. I will be presenting today along with Colleen from the Office of Energy Justice and Equity, and we are going to be talking about community benefit plans. As we've already heard, community benefit plans are a required part of the application. So it's really important to know how what you need to put in these applications and how to make them effective. So first, we're going to go over generally speaking, the community benefit plan in general and why we're doing them. Then we're going to do a deeper dive into what makes an effective community benefit plan. And we're going to go into a deeper dive into each community benefit plan priority. And then we'll do a wrap up at the end. So the overview, why are we doing this? Multiple reasons. One is because our energy system has been built and who it serves was not always equitable. It's a high priority of this administration that this is a once in a generation investment in our future from BIL and IRA. It benefits everyone. In light of this, the CBPs were created to assist applicants with reducing project risks and delays, maximizing benefits, and ensuring long-term success. So the community benefit plans, some key elements are making sure that there's smart milestones and goals per budget period in order to measure progress on your proposed actions. They'll be evaluated as part of the technical review process at 20% of the overall score. If the project is selected, DOE will incorporate the community benefits plan into the award, and the recipient will be required to implement the CBP it proposed. And during the life of the award, DOE will evaluate the recipient's progress, including as part of the go, no-go review process. So there's 4 priorities of the community benefit plan. The first is community and labor engagement, making sure that community and labor partners have been engaged early and often in the process, and that this engagement leads to formal agreements with accountability to affected stakeholders. The next priority is job quality and workforce continuity, creating good paying jobs to attract and retain skilled workers and ensure that those workers have a voice over decisions that affect them. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility is the third priority. We want to ensure equitable access to good jobs and wealth building opportunities and business and contracting opportunities as well. And then the Justice 40 priority, we expect applicants to meet or exceed the objectives of the Justice 40 initiative that 40% of total benefits of government awards accrue to disadvantaged communities. So, a lot of the goals for these priorities are to decrease project risks and delays due to community or labor opposition, decrease health and safety risks to workers and communities. We want to increase participation of affected stakeholders in decision-making. We want to increase opportunities for two-way communication with communities and labor stakeholders. We want to increase accountability to affected workers and communities and increase benefits and broadly shared prosperity from place-based projects. And in case any of you were wondering, can community benefit plans fulfill tribal consultation requirements? The answer is no, they do not fulfill the requirements for formal tribal consultation. Tribal consultation is a government-to-government process between DOE and the tribal government in recognition of tribal sovereignty. If you need help with that, there is an Office of Indian Energy that can help with your tribal consultation requirements. So we now have a modified template that is different than the former template that was previously released. It should be a lot easier to navigate. Each funding opportunity announcement applicant is encouraged to use a CBP template. It provides instructions on the type of information that an applicant could include. It gives examples and has a summary table at the end that summarizes commitments and identifies when those commitments will be happening in each budget period. So the new structure encourages folks to have those SMART milestones and clarify those commitments at the end of the template. So let's talk about what an effective community benefit plan could look like. This is a more general approach, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into each one of those priorities after this. So ultimately, it's a priority of the department that community benefit plans go beyond high-level statements or promises. The CBPs should be related to the project and designed to reduce project risk. Many programs and projects are different, and CBPs should reflect the specific issues related to the project. So we also want clear identification of the communities that are impacted by the project, where they're located, and identifying them by the CGEST tool. Offer substantive analysis on the volume of community benefits, or when and how they're expected to flow. Specific details on who's going to be engaged, when, how, and to what purpose. And to thoroughly model, offer to monitor, or ameliorate environmental impacts. So we've now broken down the rest of this presentation into the different pillars of the community benefit plans to get more specific. So the first priority is community and labor engagement. So we would like the applicant to talk about the steps that have been taken and steps that are planned to take to ensure the community and relevant stakeholders are consulted, they have a voice, and were provided an opportunity to provide feedback. So we would like applicants to describe plans to negotiate formal workforce and community agreements, to detail benefits, partner obligations, and remedies to ensure accountability. So here are some examples of effective commitments. So a commitment to negotiate collective bargaining agreements, community benefits agreements, community workforce agreements and/or good neighbor agreements, project labor agreements. You can also do a memorandum of understanding outlining the conditions for negotiation at the DOE negotiation stage. So you can outline your plans to how you will come to these agreements. Other examples of effective commitments are identification of benefits provided to affected stakeholders and local community. For example, the number of local jobs to be created and wages paid, timelines and remedies for noncompliance. Establishment of community advisory councils, including labor, tribal, and environmental justice representatives, and detailing within those community advisory council plans, how folks will be engaged and how community input is going to be actioned by the awardee. So specific questions that you can ask as you're creating this response, specificity is the name of the game here. What specific community groups and labor stakeholders will be engaged for consultations and feedback over the life of the project? What timeline will these meetings occur? Is there a specific number of engagements within a specific time frame? Are these reasonable and timely for the proposed project? And is there a defined methodology for community and/or labor stakeholder feedback? So other important questions: is there a commitment to incorporate engagement feedback into the project or program? Are there specific dates or decision points for how that engagement feedback will be incorporated? Is there a plan for collective bargaining agreements? Are there check-in dates for the negotiation and execution of any community benefit agreement or similar agreements? And what are the milestones, goals, and metrics that could be committed to in the CBP that can be recorded in these are some acronyms here, the CBU, CBR, and quarterly reporting for follow-up. So the community benefits, objectives, and sorry, I'm forgetting the other O. It's that is the summary table at the end of the template that you will see. So things that we would like improvements on, or community benefit plans that have been submitted that don't name stakeholders, don't have numbered or named engagements, don't have methodology, don't have a schedule of budget. These are things that would not be as effective commitments in a community benefit plan. And so when we're talking about how we're engaging a community, think about governance and accountability in these agreements, and particularly community advisory councils. How will key investment decisions be made? How will community and labor input be incorporated into investment decisions? What's a committee structure? What's the composition of the committee, roles, responsibilities, and how will applicants be held accountable for the commitments? Moving on to job quality and workforce continuity. Jobs and labor issues are nuanced legally, and language matters. So there's a difference between construction and operations jobs. They involve different types of jobs, different legal considerations, different stakeholders. So I'm going to be addressing those separately a little bit later in the presentation. It's the policy of the United States government to encourage worker organizing and collective bargaining. Labor standards and other factors of project success are not mutually exclusive, and the application of Davis-Bacon is a non-negotiable requirement. So what do we mean when we're talking about job quality? Job quality is high-quality job creation and retention, where we're paying above average wages and benefits in both construction and ongoing operations jobs. Investments in workforce training to support a skilled workforce and provide pathways to advancement, and ensuring workplace health and safety plan design and implementation, as well as affirmative support for worker organizing and collective bargaining. For example, making a pledge for neutrality and/or card check. So this portion of the CBP should detail how the proposed project will advance high wages, reduce income disparities across race and gender lines, ensure a trained and available workforce that's reflective of the community where the project is located, and create a safe workforce environment. So when we talk about workforce continuity, we're referring to work stoppages and workforce shortages. So stoppages can occur to health and safety incidents, strikes or lockouts. It can also happen due to insufficient workforce and workforce shortages. Workforce shortages can occur due to high workforce turnover and insufficient recruitment due to low job quality, failure to retain a skilled workforce, insufficient skills development, insufficient recruitment, as well as barriers for people to participate in training or jobs, meaning they don't have adequate transportation to get to and from the job site. They don't have childcare available, or lack of a wage subsidy for time involved in training. So we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into operations phase jobs. We'll get into construction phase jobs in a minute. So these are examples of effective commitments in a community benefit plans as they relate to operations phase jobs. So a pledge to remain neutral during any union organizing campaigns, pledge to permit union recognition through card check, pledge to enter into binding arbitration to settle first contracts, pledge to allow union organizers to access appropriate on-site non-workspaces, and a pledge to refrain from holding captive audience meetings. Commitments related to high-quality jobs are 75th percentile wages or above for industry and relevant production occupations and competitive benefits, paid training plus tuition reimbursement for additional training, establishment of health and safety committees with participation and training of hourly production workers. So those are some examples of the types of commitments that would make up an effective community benefits plan. So talking about workforce continuity in construction projects, this is really about mitigating risks associated with large-scale construction that relate to delays, cost increases, coordination challenges, legal compliance, availability of the right kind of trained workers to carry out the project, labor disputes, and public and worker health and safety considerations. So for these reasons, and we want to make sure that these projects happen on time and at under budget. Well, great if things could be under budget. So what we're suggesting is the use of a project labor agreement or project workforce continuity plan. So examples of effective commitments would be a commitment to negotiate a project labor agreement for large construction activity associated with the project. In your CBP, you can reference an MOU that will spell out the process by which a PLA would be negotiated. So it doesn't have to be negotiated prior to your application, but you should spell out how you're going to go about signing a PLA in advance. Commitments to utilize registered apprentices, again, being specific by giving a ratio of 15 to 20% of work hours. Commitments to hire locally, example, a certain percentage of those jobs. Commitments to skilled and trained credentialed workforce with a national journey card credential, and wages above the required Davis-Bacon prevailing wages. So getting into the project labor agreement a little bit more deeply, PLAs are pre-hire collective bargaining agreements negotiated between construction unions and construction contractors that establish the terms and conditions of employment for construction projects. PLAs are an effective tool to ensure timely completion of projects at or under budget, provide employers with a reliable source of highly skilled workers, increase diversity and support equitable workforce development, and improve worker health and safety on the job. Important to note, a worker does not have to be a union member to work under a PLA, and non-union contractors can bid on projects and are legal in right-to-work states. So essential elements of PLAs include provisions that bind all contractors and subcontractors to the agreement, no strike and no lockout clauses, grievance and arbitration procedures. Usually PLAs also specify the wages and fringe benefits for all workers on a project and generally require contractors to hire workers for the project through a union hiring hall that's responsible for supplying skilled labor. PLAs may also include clauses outlining goals for hiring local community members on project, incorporating equity plans, detailing strategic recruitment policies for workers from underserved communities, and requiring participation of small businesses. PLAs can also include any number of unique terms to help parties achieve their desired results. And there's a resource listed there for you. So if a PLA is not used, DOE selectees that are involved in construction projects must have a workforce continuity plan in place. The workforce continuity plan must include names of any subcontracted entities performing work on the project and the total number of workers employed by such entity, disaggregated by job title, number of contractors and subcontractors, number of workers on the project hired directly and hired through a third party, wages and benefits of workers on the project by classification, and steps taken or will be taken to essentially provide a supply of skilled labor and unskilled labor, minimize disputes, ensure a safe and healthy workplace, ensure workers on the project receive wages and benefits sufficient to secure an appropriately skilled workforce in the context of the local or regional labor market, and make investments in and or partnerships for career track workforce education and training. And now I'm going to pass it over to Colleen to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility.
Right. Thanks so much, Kate, and thanks to Mallory as well. I am really excited to be here today to talk about the last two pillars, the second two pillars of CBPs. And so the first one we're going to look at is DEIA and community benefit plans. This section of the plan must describe how diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility will be incorporated into the project. The plan should detail how the applicant will reduce barriers to employment and advance opportunities for underrepresented individuals by providing supportive services through the partnerships. Some examples here include underrepresented businesses, minorities serving institutions, training organizations that serve workers who face barriers to accessing quality jobs, or other project partners to help improve DEIA and energy jobs. As part of a whole-of-government approach to advancing equity, DOE's funding opportunities seek to encourage the participation of underserved communities and underrepresented groups. ensuring equitable access to business opportunities, good paying jobs, career track training, and other economic opportunities. Partnerships with community-based organizations, underrepresented businesses, educational institutions, as well as training organizations that serve workers who face barriers to accessing quality jobs, and or other project partners to help address DEIA are key strategies of this pillar. To the next slide. Effective CBPs may include commitments for projects to make financial investments to effective inclusive workforce development programs. This could include a small percentage of total project costs, but with an emphasis on disadvantaged communities, fence-line communities, and organizations that serve marginalized populations. Could include apprenticeship readiness programs or utilization plans, programs with K through 12 school systems, or post-secondary education institutions. Commitments for projects to provide workers and people in supported trainings with a variety of supported services critical to accessing work and workforce training. This may include affordable, high-quality childcare or other caregiving benefits for workers or people in supported trainings, transportation assistance, and career navigation mentoring programs or other supportive services. Effective CBPs may include commitments to embed inclusive recruitment and retention practices in negotiated agreements, hiring local workers, setting goals for recruitment and retention of workers from disadvantaged communities. May also include commitment to contract with minority and women-owned businesses, pledge to affirmatively support employment opportunities for formerly incarcerated workers. This could include a pledge to build workforce partnerships with CBOs, agencies that serve the incarcerated or formerly incarcerated. And importantly, a commitment to baseline DEA assessment and targeted improvements that are transparently shared and modified with community input. When developing the DEI section of a CBP, there are several questions here that are useful for consideration. Starting with, does the CBP specifically identify minority women and diverse business enterprise firms and minority serving institutions that the applicant plans to contract or partner with? Does the CBP identify workforce training organizations that serve disadvantaged communities, underrepresented or marginalized populations? Has the CBP identified robust and inclusive workforce development investments? This could include critical supportive services that will make part of the project or program. Has the CBP included a commitment to support apprenticeship readiness and registered apprenticeship programs? Does the potential awardee commit to partner with or recruit from HBCUs, TCUs, and other MSIs for research and development opportunities? And if awarded, will the applicant record commitments related to milestones, goals, or metrics in the CBU, CBR, and quarterly reporting for follow-up? The CBU is the Community Benefits Outcomes and Objectives, and the CBR is the Community Benefits Reporting, and there's a template for that, and so there can be regular reporting and follow-up. Next. So that is the third pillar, and the next one we'll look at, as Kate described, the Justice 40 initiative and how this is incorporated into the community benefit plans will be the topic in the next few slides. So the Justice 40 initiative section of the CBP needs to include identification of applicable disadvantaged communities with details on the anticipated project benefits and where those benefits will flow. Also need to include identification of applicable benefits that are measurable, quantifiable, trackable, and at a minimum, discuss the relevance of each of the 8 DOE J40 policy priorities. Also in this section, a description of how and when the anticipated benefits are expected to flow, and then a discussion of the anticipated negative and cumulative impacts on disadvantaged communities. And thinking of the last bullet there, the next few slides will talk about some of the concerns that are addressed when looking at the J40 section of the CBP. So on the next slide, we see some of the concerns that should be considered. One of the biggest concerns is that community desired benefits won't be included in the CBPs. And so there's a lot of structure within this process to include that. An advisory board concern is that it won't have meaningful input or represent the needs and concerns of communities. The fence line communities won't be engaged, and that harms will impact fence line communities without benefits flowing to them. The last one on this slide shows that engagement with communities won't be genuine and address the needs of a lot of the fence line communities. There's an awareness that a lot of DOE-funded infrastructure could add further burdens to communities that have already faced a legacy of burden. And so we see this in different geographic regions around the country. Communities facing high climate risks that could also produce catastrophic emergencies and that also are coupled with poor disaster response scenarios. There's a concern about poor compliance and enforcement with the metrics that are put into CBPs, and then also the jobs and financial benefits won't go to communities who bear a lot of these risks and are on the front line of projects and programs. This goes through a little bit more detail, and I know there's a lot of words on here, but specific EJE guidance for CBPs. EJE is the Office of Energy Justice and Equity, and these were 5 of the topics that we have looked at to refine and strengthen for CBP guidance. The first one there are regional history and context. So as I was mentioning, different geographical regions might have different key local issues that are generating distrust. And so it's important to look at how opportunities to build trust could be embedded into our CBP plans. The second one is equitable and effective environmental and energy justice engagement. And so this is looking at the composition of community advisory boards that are formed as a result of the CBPs, making sure to engage fence line communities and disadvantaged communities, supporting that engagement, and being responsive to community planning. The third one, transformative investments. How can CBPs open the door to these investments, and how can they build in perhaps resiliency hubs, environmental remediation, and rebuild trust and concerns from community? The fourth one, CBPs as bridges to lasting commitments. So how can these build a foundation for benefits and community benefits agreements, having a framework for budget and process to support that, including DEIA considerations. And then the fifth one, monitoring and accountability, transparent modeling of benefits and harms, transparent and accessible monitoring, and then really importantly, accountability with the systems and metrics as the projects continue. Examples, things that the CBPs could include to be effective, is having the applicant clearly identify communities impacted, both in a positive sense or negative way by the project or program, and provide also how these communities are identified and characterized. There are a lot of tools available. Our office, EJE, has the Energy Justice Dashboard. There's also CJEST, the DOE DAC reporter, so different ways to identify communities impacted. Also, applicant clearly defines what benefits will result from the project or program and how the benefits will flow to communities impacted. Important that these benefits are reasonable, obtainable, and in accordance with DOE's J40 policy priorities. We have a couple more bullets about effective CBPs. We see the applicant clearly describes the impact of the positive impact of the project, both on local air, water, and/or land quality. And the applicant offers clear and reasonable metrics to track how the identified benefits will flow and provides milestones and a schedule for when these will be expected. And there's a link there that can be made available to get a little bit more information and detailed guidance on this. So this is the last slide for this section, just aims and recommendations to consider. It's really important that all CBP commitments are publicly available in one shared location online. This will include go, no go criteria being made available as well. commitment to transparently model environmental impacts, like we just talked about air, water, land use concerns, with third-party compliance, also an aim and recommendation, commitment to community advisory board and transparent accountability measures. Environmental compliance also is criteria for go, no go. And then end of phase 1 life cycle assessments that are shared and include upstream and downstream impacts of the project. Importantly, emergency response and capacity building for first responders. And so all of this are in the aims of recommendations for the J40 section of the CBPs. And I will send it back to Kate.
Thanks, Colleen. So just kind of wrapping things up, going back to the big picture, you know, success is in the details. We would really like to see specifics in these CBPs. So if you can put in community benefit agreements or project labor agreement execution dates, or have an MOU signed with details on how you will sign a PLA. We understand that it's oftentimes difficult to get a lot of people to the table before you have money in hand. There's a little bit of a chicken and egg situation here, but we want you to really commit to signing a negotiated agreement of some kind and discuss how you will get to that negotiated agreement. Think about establishing budgets, timelines, deadlines for stakeholder engagement, clearly identifying them, really thinking about what stakeholders need to be included to make the project successful. So sometimes we'll see applications that have, you know, two kinds of stakeholders, a community college and maybe a local labor board. But they're doing a big construction project and putting in a new factory. Well, it would be great if folks could think a little bit beyond that and think, well, there might be certain community groups that might oppose building a factory here, and make sure that all of those key stakeholders are at the table in advance. And also thinking about how any kind of negotiated agreement or organization, community advisory board will be structured and how to be governed. Also defining, identifying benefits that tie to concrete metrics that can be measured and set as goals, and also clearly describing size and scope of impacts and to what communities those impacts will be felt. So modeling health impacts, emissions monitoring, amelioration plans. And so in some, we're looking at SMART milestones, clear metrics, specific commitments that align with each section of the template, that respond to the specific FOA topic, integrate with the project such that the CBP outcomes can impact project decisions, identifying sufficient resources to achieve the tasks outlined in the CBP, you know, reaching beyond high level or vague vision to demonstrate actionable goals, outcomes, and implementations, and commitments that consider possible project impacts on impacted communities and workers, labor and workforce, and tribes, and that the identified commitments align with identified needs and priorities. You know, we definitely want CBP commitments to be related directly to the project. You know, oftentimes we'll see something in a CBP that talks about donations to a local charity. And while that is lovely and definitely commendable, it's not specifically related to the project. The CBPs are really about risk mitigation and ensuring broad spread prosperity. And so thinking about how those DOE funds will affect the community, and how do we protect the DOE funds, which are taxpayer dollars, and make sure that those funds are being used in an appropriate and efficient way. So let's mitigate risk and make sure these projects happen on time and at budget. And with that, I'm going to just provide a few resources. So we have frequently asked questions. We have a modified template that should be up very shortly on the website. It was just put up this week. And there's a community benefit agreement toolkit, including a webinar that's also available on our website. And I'd also want to flag that for demonstration and deployment projects, the Green Economy Program of UC Labor Program has agreed to provide no-cost technical assistance to stakeholders interested in developing and implementing the job quality and skilled workforce and labor engagement components of community benefit plans. So definitely reach out. They're a great resource and can really help produce a community benefit plan that is likely to be very effective. And that is it for my part of the presentation. Let's see. There we go.
Great, thank you very much. Thanks, Colleen and Kate, both for your presentation and for the discussion. We thank you all for joining this webinar. As stated previously, the webinar will be posted at a later date onto DOE's site, so you can watch this again for more information. And we ask any questions in relation to this webinar be routed towards the frequently asked questions FOA inbox for this funding opportunity. And with that, we will close off the webinar and appreciate you all again for attending.